So
Okay.
in this week's episode, I've got an amazing author. She's also a syndicated cartoonist. I'm going to read a little bit more about her bio here, but we kind of connected through social media because of the similarities in the message that we're sending out to the world, and we're trying to promote to people, which is self-worth. And the amazing thing with her is, with Maria's, is these are children's books, and they're through the teens and things like that, and the message is amazing how she puts it down. She also illustrates these things, and they're all inspired from talking to her based upon her life as she was growing up. So let me read just this about her, and so you kind of have the full scope of the Maria and why she's
Good.
so. Maria is a New York Times bestselling author, award-winning syndicated cartoonist. Her laugh out loud comic, Half Full, appears daily in newspapers nationwide and on gocomics.com. Maria licensed her work for greeting cards, and her cartoons have appeared in Mad Magazine, Parade, and many other publications. Nat Enough, her debut graphic novel, was an instant New York Times bestseller, and the follow-ups, Forget Me Nat and Absolutely Nat, have also been released to great acclaim. Learn more about Maria at Maria Scrivon.
Scrivon. Close
Maria
enough.
Scrivon. I got it. I got it the second time. MariaScrivon.com. So thank you for being here, Maria.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. I've been through the books, and I first of all, the illustrations and you doing that, and so there's two things with that. First of all, is obviously if you're able to do that, I'm seeing it looking at your books. If you're able to be the illustrator of what the story that you're putting down, how that to me just is next level. I mean, trying to get somebody to get the expressions right or the things you're trying to put across, there's a layer there, or a little gap. I think that can, where things can get missed. So I think that's great that you do that too, and they're amazing, and they tell the story, and just the little things in here. I love the spots with the dog and the cat, and just the little, it kind of bridges, some of what the story you're telling, through the different, when you get moved to different chapters and things like that. But again, the self-worth is the big message here, and kind of following Nat through this process. And I focused more on the middle school only because I remember for me, gosh, how excruciating that was, that whole middle school process, right? And
yeah, it's a rough time.
Yeah, and just the way you've kind of overall expanded on it, and this is kind of what you and I previously talked about. It is the specialty of the age group you're at, and these books for this particular group of our younger ones. That's where it's so important to try to get them latched on to how to operate through these difficult times with tools and things that they can use, and a mindset they can develop so that they push through these things. And you connect all that with what you're doing, because you're laying it out for like your experiences, and it's great. Look, these books are, the adults should read them, because the self-worth process and what I really drive into people and push on people is that hardcore stuff. And look, this is all that you're the young, all being a child and growing into adulthood. You've got to just take responsibility. There's no time to morph. You've got to go hard on moving forward with your self-worth, developing it, creating it, becoming the self-care savage is what I put out. But, this is at the younger age, I can't promote that enough. And I'm so glad, again, coming across you just so I can, uh, uh, give this information to people and direct them to these books and things like this. Cause I think it's, the self-worth part is not touched on a lot. Of course, stories about middle school or things like that pointed directly toward kids is not really connecting a lot of those pieces, or promoting that piece. And if you don't have self-worth, you don't have confidence, you don't have self-esteem, you don't have all of those things to move forward as a kid. So I know I'm talking a lot, but I'm just trying to lay this out a little bit, because of why I'm so drawn to it and what you've done. So again, I did bring up that these are inspired by you, and I know again we talked about you of course writing them and creating the stories based on your childhood and then illustrating them and all that. So just from you, if you could just tell us maybe a little bit more how it came to the putting it in a written form and then the illustrating it, all those things. How did you get to that point leading to where you are now?
Well, I went back and looked at files, and I actually started writing vignettes from childhood around 2013. The whole book started in 2018. So it was 5 years previous. And at that point, I thought it was going to be a prose book with spot illustrations. I saw a graphic novelist speak. I think it was 2017. I was like, oh, of course, this has to be a graphic novel. My dream as a child was to be a cartoonist. I am so grateful that I get to live my dream. I'm a very visual person. And I know one thing I love about graphic novels is there's a whole other layer of empathy because you get to see the expressions of everybody in the scene. You don't just hear about what the main character's doing or maybe the secondary character. You have a whole scene. So for me, it was the perfect recipe. And it's funny, I think I really ended up writing these books for my own personal healing. And although Nat was based on my childhood self and childhood experiences, she became one of my greatest teachers. And this idea that resonates through the book of being more of who you are, focusing on who you are instead of who you aren't, I learned so much from her. And this idea of surrounding yourself with people that lift you up. And actually, it's funny. In the first book, she loses her best friend. Same thing happened to
Yep.
me. And she makes new friends. And
Lily.
I was just
Lily
at a
was the best friend.
Lily.
Yeah.
Lily was her ex best frenemy. Then she finds Zoe. And I should mention that Lily is an amalgam of characters and Zoe is, so I'm not throwing any specific person under the bus. But I went to a concert the other day with basically the friend that stepped in my life after Lily, and we've been friends for decades. So it's kind of
Nice.
like kids need to realize like the people who are important stick around. The right people come in, and the people who are going to put you down or be your bully, you don't want them in your life anyway. And you say the same thing in your message. That's
Mhm.
why I was drawn to your messages because I was like, we're saying the same thing, just
Right.
generationally a little different, but your message is for everyone as well. I hope kids hear your messages. It's really important. I wish I knew that when I was a kid.
Oh, I know. Gosh, yeah, absolutely. It's so important, and you talk about, and it's one of the things in here I did earmark, and if I can find it real quick, but so it kind of ties into what you were saying. It's in the back of the description of Nat enough. It says if Natalie can focus on who she is rather than who she isn't, then she might realize she's more than enough just the way she is. And
Yep.
sometimes that is created by people. That is getting, you get to that understanding when you lose something or somebody does disappoint you or, cut you out of their life or pushes you or, you get all that, especially in middle school and as a kid.
Oh, the dynamics
And
are crazy.
these are not things that are at all. Um, First of all, kids don't know how to really talk about these things. They don't know
Hmm.
how to process them because remember they're dealing with a lot of things new. When you're an adult, no more excuses. Look, you already been through all that. Fine, whatever. Let's, it's over. Start, start dealing with it. Take responsibility. No excuses when you're a kid, a lot of these are first experiences. So
Hmm.
even if you want to talk about it, you don't know how to talk about it. even if it's rolling around in your head, it's not like, even if you have engaged parents, or you do have, or you've learned to journal at an early age, and you do, write things down. A lot of times it's not coming out, to where it's really even making sense to you yet, because it's not over and done with. So a lot of times you have to go through this. That's why I love the story stuff, and the way you go through all of this. And then there's just all these, you have these pieces that, how to deal with the doubt gremlins. I mean, you
Yeah.
give the again, those tools, and you give those things. Hey, here's a story, and you went through the whole thing, and then here are ways to work with it and deal with it and think about it. And and I love that. And you have that page that just, goes from how to deal with the doubt gremlins, giving, a few points. But then the next page is all the words. It shows all of the, happy, fun stuff, from, it uses like be inspired, and you rock, and dream big. And then there's just a picture of a pizza. Well, what kids don't
Yeah.
love pizza? That's a happy thing. And then there's a rainbow, and then there's a bee, and then there's today is a great day.
I'm
Attitude
gonna
is
hold it up
gratitude.
for the
Yeah, that's
video.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it too. I'm reading from it, but
These
it's
are rocks from the pandemic too. I wanted to throw a little
okay.
bit of pandemic experience, but not a lot because nobody really wants to talk about it. So I got all the
Right.
pink rocks that kids made for the pandemic.
That's amazing. And again, that's kids. Kid, kids need they need visuals. Even if you're
Yeah.
not a visual person, so to speak, that they talk about, even when you get to be an adult. Well, I'm not a visual person. Well, how do you know that? I mean, most people that they're you can't just say that. And that's again what we've learned, what we've latched on to. And you didn't write this book just for visual people. You didn't write this, because the kids are drawn to this. They're drawn to colors. They're drawn to brightness. They would prefer to. I looked up colors. I've done a lot of things with things that I've done, and colors are so important and to kids, especially through their anxiety, depression, and how they feel about themselves. There's certain things that trigger them, and things like that. So, again, I so appreciate that. So it's I just think it's great, and it's what I promote and preach so much too. Is once you start healing, and once you start, forgiving, and you start telling these stories differently, and you're
Yeah.
telling your stories, you know, differently after you've talked about what you went through. That's that's what there's a difference between being a victim, and this trails into a lot of the addiction world and addictive behavior. You can there's a phrase called telling war stories. So addicts, victims, people like that, they talk about all these poor me things when they were younger, when they were a kid, and all this unfortunateness, and it just brings them down as they're talking. You just see them sinking, and they just let it set in, and it's just poor me, and there's no moving from that. But you're just laying out these scenarios. Look, these are things can happen. But the great thing is you start telling it differently, and start giving information, about how you can get through this, and the tools you can use, even if you weren't using them then. These are things you recognize that can be used, and it's very
Right.
age appropriate. It's just giving them, again, that's the biggest piece. If you change your mind, if you change your perception, if you change all that, just like healing and forgiving, all of that is going to shift. So
Totally.
the younger you get them, the more you go through this is just amazing. So that's a big testament to this. So that kind of led into a little bit about wanting to bridge things. Paul and I were talking about this before you came on, and that's why it's the conversational piece through the podcast, or to me, are so important, because I never know where I'm going to go. I know
Yeah.
that I want to connect the dots. I know I want to present you, and I know I want them to see, anybody listening to hear this, the value through all of
Yep.
this. And it is, you and I, it's a big part of this connection. This is, it's Men's Mental Health Month. And I'm not trying to tie this into this. It may not even make it into the podcast, but it does. We did another podcast this week on that. I guess we did it yesterday morning. Is that right, Paul?
Yeah, that was yesterday.
On this, and it was just a solo podcast, but it was just tied into the talking part, and the, and I did my friendly reminder that went up today was actually a repurposed one, and it ties into what we're talking about there with that, which is, again. And I even wrote that in the description. You can't, if you don't talk, you can't heal.
Oh, definitely.
If you don't heal, you can't forgive. And if you don't
absolutely
forgive, you're not ever going to be able to move forward to find some peace and happiness in your life. And it's the same thing with kids. We sometimes don't think they're ready for things, and it's unfortunate too that the parents. Kids are usually raised there. It's an environmental thing. It's you're a product of your environment is something I know and I believe in. I was an administrator for an adolescent treatment center for years. I know the effect that parents have. You bad parents. It's what is also put on Nat and other kids. It's what you grow up in. And anyways. To me, that's just why it all ties in together. It's anything that can give a 4-year-old, a 14-year-old, a 24-year-old, on through their lives, anything that can just arm you with more information and give you avenues, give you tools. But the main thing is talking. And the same thing, with Nat and them, Nat, a lot of what you do in here is there's a lot of talking going on. She's talking in her head, all that stuff. And that's the other part I put in. I think I put that in the description in the friendly reminder today is, look, if you don't have anybody to talk to, if there's not anybody available, your life you've created this world where there's nobody there. Well, that's no excuse. You go look in the mirror. There's your best friend right there. That's the person you should be falling in love with. That's the person you should be doing this for. So go talk to them and pull your journal out, start writing. But if you're not doing those things, you're not going to heal and you're not going to get better. But Paul and I were talking about this too, because we were talking about this specific friendly reminder because I pulled it up. And the last time, I think it was posted it was December of last year. And I was reading through the comments and going through all that. But there's just a lot of pushback. Again, I don't have anybody to talk to. What if you're supposed to talk to somebody? And I did write a comment in there to one of those that pushed back and said, it sounds like you have a lot of excuses going on not to do anything.
Wow.
So
journaling too is such a tool.
I don't do that a lot, but that triggered them. That's insensitive, blah, 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 blah. But that's what victims do. The reason I know what victims do is because I lived a victim forever. You can't pull the wool over my eyes. I know why you reacted to that, because you're protecting your stance. It's all that victim. You're not perfect, or you've been called out on not doing anything. You can't blame anybody. I took everybody out of the equation that you can blame now. It's the only person you can blame is yourself. So I know I'm getting off on this a little bit. I don't think all this will definitely be in there, but I think these are things that are important.
I think the thing about talking to yourself, the journaling thing, because you always talk about journaling, and that was a huge part of my life. And a lot of my journaling ended up in the books. And that idea of healing, I love the idea that when we heal ourselves, we heal each other. Yes. So it's so important for that. And if you have no one to talk to, totally, yourself that's your best friend right there.
Exactly.
And she has that mirror in the beginning. It's sort of her biggest critic. It's that back and forth. But journaling is one of the most amazing things that I've been doing ever since I was a kid.
Yes.
I had a diary, I had a Garfield diary, and took stuff out of my sixth grade Garfield diary and put it in the books. So I've been doing
That's
this my
amazing.
whole
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. That's great. I mean, again, that's another piece that we need to be giving our kids. There's just not that message to, again, here's how you can get this out of your mind. You can put it
Yeah,
on paper. You know, cognitive behavioral therapy was a huge piece for me, and it connected the dots for a lot of things, and that's about what journaling is about,
yeah,
especially through cognitive behavioral therapy, is connecting the dots. So even as a kid, just teaching them, when you teach them to journal, is teaching them that one little other piece is, look, you're having some struggles with this. This was happening a month ago. You've had some new friends. It's happening again, or some things. Write all these things. When you're writing them down, just ask yourself some questions. What did you just eat? Or who did you just talk to? Or who
yeah,
did you
that's
just
good.
see on the street when you were at the store? What's the weather like? What
Oh,
time
I
of
love that.
year is it? All that. And then just this is what I instruct adults on, which I think can apply to kids, and that can be told by somebody that can express it a little different. But that's how they can connect the dots. It may take a couple of months, it may take a while, but as they do write
Yeah,
their journaling, and then they just take that minute and ask themselves those 7, 10 questions, then they can start
that's
looking
great.
back and going, okay, they can start seeing what triggers them, what's happening, why they might push somebody away, and they don't, because they don't understand their feelings, but they can help them start understanding their feelings as to why they may push people away. What just happened? Again, did something going on with my mom, or did something happen? Did we move again? Who knows what that is that a kid still is not understanding and connecting. They can sooner. What an amazing thing if we can get these. And you are. So that's the great thing. And I want to push more people to you, so you can get them earlier, because they're tiring me out when they get to be a done kid.
You know
So
what's funny about visual, though, you said
mhm.
that, these are visual. We are a visual society now. And that's why your message is so well communicated in
Good
quick
point.
Instagram bites. Because everybody has a phone attached to their hand, myself included. That's just the world we're in. Everything is
Yep.
visual. So that's where I think, and I can't tell you how many reluctant readers have read my book, and it was the first book they ever read. It's a big book, it's 235 pages.
Mhm.
So now they feel successful. But
Yeah.
this idea of a visual connection, I think that's where we're at. And I think
Yeah.
that's why,
A
especially
good
your
point.
message, it's short and quick, and we have no attention span. So it's a very
Right.
fast, like, this is what you need to know, which is really amazing.
Yeah. It's no, we 100% agree, and I never kind of thought of it that way, but yeah, it makes we're whether, like I was saying, whether you like it or not, we're I don't think again, generationally, there was not social media, and there was not that.
Right.
So it's still, I'm such a believer in it. If you can
Yeah.
follow, and again, we're talking about that. That's part of all this. I know I'm kind of moving a little bit to a different lane, but going the same direction. It is social media, the algorithms, and people. I hear people my age all the time. Well, every time we get on there, I'm not interested in watching people dance, and I'm not interested in watching all these things. Well, the reason that those come up when you get on Facebook, or the reason they come up, not just TikTok, but Facebook, Instagram, whatever you're looking at, the reason those videos and those things are coming up in your feed is because you're watching them. It's
Right.
the algorithm. So
Yeah.
even if you didn't click on it, if it comes into your feed, and you scroll through and you stop, and it's a
Right.
45-second video, and you're watching the whole thing, for whatever reason you zone out or whatever's happening, the algorithm picks up on that. So they're going to start
Right.
showing you that more. So I tell people, look, if you want to see what my algorithm looks like, it's just a bunch of uh, people screaming at you to get better, or there's just people I follow, messages around things. So it's people, they will use these tools that we're so resistant to, especially my age. I know we were talking about kids and you, but there's also this other end. There's all this gap in the middle, and then you get to be old like me, and you haven't done anything, and life is now dwindling away. This is part of my giving up on myself and leading me to where I am. Is, my kids were leaving the house, and just life was changing. My identity was so tied into certain things, and then it just slowly, just, it's like now you're just with yourself, and then that's just a nightmare, because as a 50-year-old man back then, all this stuff that's already rushing through my head that I was trying to suppress, and suppressing it, operating in a very poor way. But now I can't, it's just, you can't stop it. And
Right.
luckily I found the avenues I found to move in the direction I moved. But anyways, you're right. The visual thing, extremely important. And I do get, short, sweet, concise, our attention spans, because of social media, have dwindled, to lower amounts, because of the instant hits, and you can keep moving and get what you need. So
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's fine. So Natalie was based on my childhood self, and literally modeled her over what I look like at 8, 9, or 10 years old with my big glasses. My middle name is Notarilli, so that's where the name Natalie came from. And especially the first book, all of those stories, everything from her actually. Oh, I got to share this. There's her in a school play in a funny parrot costume. Let's see, can we do this? Yeah.
yeah,
So there it
look
is.
at that.
So I took real childhood experiences. I have this great photo that I use in presentations. Natalie completely loses it on the hurdles. I'm in field day, and there's this great photo
Yeah.
my dad took, and my face is about to hit the ground. So I lived all of this. I lived it. I was mortified. I thought I was such a clutch. I thought I wasn't athletic. And something that I tell in the talks that I do is those were just stories that I told about myself. I just made those up because as an adult, I've done 2 Ironman triathlons. I've done 2 marathons. I run and hike. And so all of that stuff that got in my head of not being enough, not being athletic, not being whatever, were just stories that I made up and hung on to for a very long time. And for me as a cartoonist, it's amazing to go back and process, there she is, process this through the lens of humor. So although I write about heavy stuff, all of it's through a filter of humor. And as a syndicated cartoonist, I have the daily panel that helped me, that trained me for the last decade to look at life through humor. Like, what is funny about being in the DMV for 6 hours? Like, there's something funny in almost everything. It just takes time. I mean, at the time, my middle school stuff was not funny at all. Not funny at all. But years later, I get to write about it through the lens of humor. And it's a lot of stuff I'm even still going through. Scott mentioned the Dow Gremlins. I mean, that 4th book almost killed me. I rewrote that thing, I don't know, 30 times. I could not get the story right, whatever. And that's another thing I tell kids, like, you think adults or somebody, I'm now starting my 6th book. You would think by now I just sat down and write a book and that's it. And I said to them, I was watching actually the Oscars this year, and a man was holding an Oscar in his hand and looked at the camera and said, I have imposter syndrome. I have low self-esteem. And I'm like, how much more validation do you need? You have an Oscar in your hand. I have it too. I mean, this is me. Like, this is me. This is Nat, but it's me now. I still struggle with this. I think a lot of adults and a lot of artists, or it doesn't even matter if it's art, it's sports, it's anything, this idea of self-doubt, and I'm not sure, and imposter syndrome and all that. I think it's something that a lot of us work through. So to Scott's point before, these are for kids, but adults can read them too. I mean, these are a lot of issues that I'm still going through and working through, but that's how I process. I process by drawing cartoons and basically making fun of myself and stuff that I'm going through. And that's how I learn how to heal. So
That's beautiful. And again, that's a lot of, a lot of the same process with me. I talk about it all the time. People, when I've been asked, why is there an appeal? Why do people, are they drawn to me? And, again, it's very uncomfortable answering questions like that, but I can just state the truth. It's because people know I'm heal. I tell people all the time, look, I'm healing. You're watching me in progress. You know, it never goes away. So this is the deal. This is again talking about what you just talked about as these ages and these books you're putting out is getting this in our youth's head earlier about
Yeah,
how what their worth is and to stop you don't need to let these things come in and bust it up, and you can be stronger. It may not always go away. It may, in fact, you again.
exactly.
I've earmarked all these things in here, and
I address that.
I can't pull them up anymore. But yeah, you do address
Yeah,
that, and you talk about
it may
that.
not, you manage it. It doesn't go away, but you deal with it.
Exactly, and it's the same thing now. Look, there's there's nobody out there. I don't care who it is that doesn't deal with it at some level. You may be better at the imposter syndrome stuff. You may have gone through it enough, won enough Oscars, or got enough accolades, or you've spoken enough. You're whatever you do to you've done the reps to where it's more natural for you to accept that you do have something to offer the world and to people,
Right.
whatever it is you're expressing. And so, you know, you're able to, it's your mindset is a way that when those doubts come in right before you're walking on stage or whatever, you know, you can knock them out like that. You can push them
Yeah.
away. Or as you put it, what was it? It's the way you put it was move them to the side, or what
I
was
tell
it?
them to go, yeah, I tell them to go watch, yeah, watch a movie, do a 100,000 piece jigsaw puzzle, read a book, get out of the way because I got
Yeah,
stuff to do.
exactly. Out of the
So
way.
I tell
Yeah.
them to go out of the way.
And I thought that was amazing. You know, I mean, again, those are those little things that, again, someone, you know, that age group is going to be able to understand. And, but
Yeah.
again, same thing as an adult. Again, it doesn't go away. But the earlier you can learn how to manage those things and understand they're not real, and usually they're coming from somebody else. You know, that's the big thing too, is what goes in your head as a child, and usually the way you feel is again messages that have been put in your head.
That's true.
And
Yeah.
doesn't mean that, you know, I again, you know, I pick on parents, but I also look, and I and I was a very imperfect parent, but it's again, we don't realize that everything we do and say and present and interact and all that is kids are seeing what you're doing versus
Yes.
listening. And again, a lot of what you're doing is talking, and it just again they observe, and that's what they remember. You know, they're
Yeah.
going to remember what you see, what they see, and what they observe. That's what sets in. Again, that's that visual part, and especially kids. You know that's what's going to burn in your brain more than because usually when adults are doing this, and that's what
Yeah.
they're doing, the kid is the kid eventually is going to check out. If they hadn't
Sure.
checked out before they even started, they're going to just, you know, they're going to check out. So if they're watching and they know, you know, again, it becomes you know, a reel that gets filed, and they pull that up when they deal with
Yeah.
something, and they're going to
Literally.
go, well, my dad did it that way, or they whatever. And then if it goes wrong, then they're going to go, being in that victim mentality, they're going to go, well, it's my dad's fault because this is
That's
what he
funny.
did.
You're right.
You know, so
Yeah.
it's we do all this, and this is, look, I am not any way a mind expert. I have a lot of psychology background, but the mind is so touchy and so uh it's going to latch on to things that you don't realize, and it's going to push away things you think are all these different things are going to happen. Why and what? I just, I'm too old to go down that road anymore. But I do know that if we start the narrative different with our kids and make these things important, you know,
Yeah.
set them up with a little more success and understanding before they walk into that first day of middle school, you know,
I
and
agree completely.
and I don't know exactly how that needs to be done because again, but this is a start, you know. Hey, your
It
kids
is.
going to
And,
middle school the summer before, you better get them all these books, you know.
Well, a big thing about your message that is so appealing as well is that you speak the truth. And so many times when I've heard you say just a few lines, I'm like, oh my God, that's me. And I've always found in writing that the more there's this great quote, and I don't know who to attribute to it, but the more personal, the more universal. So I think when we speak our truth and when we share our stories, we can
Yes.
all connect, and other people are like, oh, I'm going through that too. So many of your messages are like, oh, yeah, that's totally it. That's exactly what I needed to hear. So I think it's really important that we all share our stories and what we're going through because other people will resonate.
Paul, what were we talking about yesterday? That's one of the things I was talking about. Exactly
Really?
what
Yep.
you just said is what I was saying is next level self-care. Look,
Right.
you're going to get to the point where you do feel like I've been working on myself viciously, for a long time.
Yeah.
But not everybody needs to do that or go as deep as I did or whatever. But I was talking to Paul, and that was one of the things I was mentioning. That's part of talking about this is,
Right.
talking about your feelings and healing and all that, and you telling the story different. Next level for your own self-care, when you're to a point where you're really strong and you're bulletproof in a lot of ways, and you're working that, and you've got some time behind you, and you know it, you feel it, you can speak it differently, speak it concisely, and start talking about it and start saying it out
Yeah.
loud, because that's what helps people. And when
Definitely.
you help somebody, I can't express to anybody enough. Anybody latches on, and people say all the time, you got to take a day off from your mental health. You have to do this. You don't have to post every day on social media and all that. Look, you don't. I do.
Right.
I do. That's my therapy. That's what keeps me clean. That's what I love. And how can I not be part of this amazing community that I'm part of? Look at the comments and posts I put up, and people say, "Oh my gosh, you helped me out of this narcissistic relationship, or you helped me move past this." I have stuff saved that are just, it's like, what? I mean, a guy
Yeah.
wrote to me about, this is Rob. This is one of Rob's friends, Paul. That this is a guy we had on from our earlier podcast, but he was following me before Rob was. But anyways, he had cancer. And he literally wrote me this thing and said, "You helped," and he's in remission now. I mean, he was like a mess. And he said, "You are one of the biggest pieces that helped me keep my mind in a place to move past all this."
That's amazing.
How can I not wake up in the morning and
Yeah.
not want to continue this on? To not seek out, "Oh, I'm tired. Oh, I'm not. I'm not tired.
Yeah.
I'm I can put that in my head, but it's that other piece." Paul, I'm sorry. It's funny because talking to you, it just relates so much to what Paul and I have been talking about all this week and the podcast we've done and all that. And it's just exactly what you just said, Maria. It's when you share and you start talking about it, and you're able to show people what's worked for you, and how you've done it, and you're willing to do that. That's next level for you. That's next level for whoever's doing that, to take their self-care to another level. Because talk about really keeping you clean and really keeping you yourself going forward is being able to do that. And if we can get our younger generation to heal as things are going on and be able to speak about it and help that other
Yeah.
person that's a peer or what, oh, it's just, this is that whole, oh, that's the point I was going to make. Last point, sorry, is all this used to be about me, and I talked about that. I talk about it all the time, and I started changing my narrative the end of last year, and I talk about it all the time now. I started all this for me. It was just about me, hold myself accountable. It's everything I needed to hear, everything I was learning. It was just for me, and it's grown into this thing unexpectedly. And so it's not about me anymore, and I don't even
Yeah.
look
It's
at it that way.
community.
it is about all of us. It's about everybody. And
Yeah.
that is, talk about something that clicked for me and helped is helping me right now. I mean, just this year and getting into putting myself in more social situations and realizing how much we do need each other, and it's so important to have human connection and all that is is just, I mean, this I've just healed a bunch of other stuff, that you really just don't even still know that's in there. And
I think what you mentioned that the other day, the power of community and how we all really need our each other's support. And also that idea of, especially middle school, people feel so alone. And a lot of adults too, in their problems, and they feel completely isolated, that there's no one else that feels the same way. And that's back to what we were saying before about sharing our stories and knowing that, like, even if it's just seeing somebody else say it, be like,
yep.
oh, there's a connection. So it's funny. Social media is this kind of like disconnected space, but it also really is about connection and about sharing and bringing our thoughts to each other and our stories to each other and helping each other, because you can't do it alone. You can't do these things alone. We need each other. We all need each other to help each other out. So it's a huge part. I
That
love
is
the
a huge
community that you
part.
built. It's amazing. It's really cool.
Well, I appreciate it. And it's again, there's the kudos go to the community. Uh, it, I don't really even understand how it's developed into what it is, because anybody that looks at my stuff, and even Paul, and we've talked about this too, I just don't have a lot of hate or trolls, or just not,
Great.
there's just not a lot. I get spam. I get people
Yeah,
posting, "Hey,
well,
go to my profile and invest in Bitcoin," or whatever they're selling or doing. But there's just not people that come on there and go, "This is the dumbest stuff in the world," or they don't. There's nobody attacking each other.
right. That's
Again, there's
great.
some, yeah, it is, but look, I'm one of however many it is today. I'm just one, and just being part of this is it. Again, it's not about me anymore. This is not about, look what I've done. Look what this done. This community is what it makes they're the heartbeat. They're the ones that
Yeah.
are that share the information. They're the ones that comment. They're the ones that build the others up in there. They're the ones that are having their connections out there. I'm finding out now about these other people that are starting all these other things on their own now. They're
Wow.
they're doing their self care, and they're showing things that they're doing and how it's working. It may not be hiking like me or the outdoors, but it's things, through their art, through all these things that you're doing with these kids to express themselves and to let themselves out. And to do that, you have to, shut you are bad, you can't, your art sucks, or your dog picture's
Yeah.
stupid. To move forward and do these things. And it's the same thing with adults. We're all in here. So again, I'm just, the gratefulness for me is not surface level with my community. It's just deep and ingrained. It's what I couldn't do. I couldn't continue to move at the pace and the level that I move through with my own still continuous self-care savage, thing I've coined, to, if I wasn't for the community. But okay. So Maria, first of all, thank you so much again for being on here.
Thank you.
This has been incredible. It's another therapy session for me. I'm not,
Me too.
so I so appreciate that. But so if you would, I want, we got to get people to you, however
Okay.
fast as we can and as many as we can, because you're amazing with what you're doing. So tell everybody where they can find you, and
Sure.
anything you want to promote. Again, anything you have, the next book coming out, or even if your stuff that's syndicated that you're doing daily, whatever you want to put out
Yeah.
there, just throw it out there. Go.
Okay, great. So you can find pretty much everything at mariascrivan.com, MariaScrivan.com. across all social media, I'm at Maria Scrivon, and the the current book that's out right now is Nat for Nothing. This is the fourth. I have a cool project with Marvel called Marvel Super Stories, where a bunch of graphic novelists were all given a superhero. I was given Squirrel Girl, who could not have been better for me. So I had to do
Really? That's
yeah, it was
crazy.
really fun to
Nice.
work on. So I had to do a 6-page story about Squirrel Girl. That's coming out in October. The fifth book in the series, which is called All Is Nat Lost, about a class trip to Philadelphia, is coming out in February. And I just started book 6, and I don't have much to say about it other than I just started writing that. So that's what I'll be doing for the next, 6, 7 months coming up. So yeah.
That's amazing. So, and just so everybody knows too, Maria may not know all of this I'm fixing to say, but we talked a little bit about it. But we're going to collaborate probably on some things coming up
That'd be cool.
to continue this message. Now that we can get everybody from the age they hit the ground until it's time to go. We're going to get everybody in between there,
Everybody
and
to know their worth.
that's right.